got you guys a present.
Hi. I've got a bone to pick with you. Okay.
So,
Hi.
hi. It's like we've met before. So,
How many left? I didn't see that. Now, who left? Out to smoke. Okay, good. They'll be back.
they have to come back. It's you. So, I have a question. You've been asked a million times about the prosthetics. You've been asked a million times about how long it took. If you knew at the beginning how long it was going to take, would you have done it?
Well, I probably would have tried to renegotiate. You know, this was it was a process of 10 hours a day in the makeup chair for 5 days to shoot that transformation scene. We filmed the entire film, wrapped it, was all done, dismissed everybody except for a very small crew and Rick Baker and his assistants, and then proceeded to do that transformation, which, as they say, took 5 days. I knew what I was getting into because when we started the makeup process, this was back in the fall. I should tell you the process of this film, it really started at Rick's shop in October of 1980, hard to believe. And we started in England in February of 1981, and the film was released in August of 1981. So really a very fast start to finish process. But when we went to Rick's shop, right after we were cast, Griffin Dunn, of course, had to do a lot of makeup, and myself, John Landis wanted to get right over to Rick Baker's shop, which was pretty, you know, it was like rented garage space, if you can imagine, because years later, of course, Rick had this gigantic building with like 100 employees after his 7 Academy Awards. But this was the first, and when we did that preliminary makeup at his shop, I knew I was in for something, because we were doing molds of my arms and of my head, like 5 times, and feet, and knew that this process was going to be a challenge.
Fair enough. You probably should have gotten more for it? No.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I would have done it for nothing, actually. It was a role that when I met with John, it was really immediate. This is one of those auditions that you don't have to do a lot. It wasn't a big screen test or things that you hear about. It was really just sitting in his office, talking, chatting, getting a chance to know him, and him getting a chance to know me. I told him I had studied acting in London 5 years prior to this experience, and he gave me the script and said, "Read this and call me tomorrow." I read it and called him the next day, and he said, "Do you want to be a werewolf?" And I didn't know what that meant, but I said, "This sounds like an adventure."
So, I've seen in other panels, on other interviews, John always seems very animated. Is he like that on set? Is he?
That is John. John Landis, he had, I should tell you, the very first day of shooting was the porn scene. Yeah. Now, here's the thing, in English, on most movie crews, the crews don't read the script. They claim they do, but they really don't. They're basically in it for the gig, depending on if they're electricians, gaffers, whatever their job is. So they get hired and they want to know for how long, and they negotiate weeks. So this was like a 10-week shoot. And it was with this guy, John Landis, whom they didn't really know. They knew of him, of course, with the success of his previous movies. But when he showed up, they literally thought he was either out of his mind or really angry, because he was always yelling and really animated. But it was just his excitement. And English people are a little different under pressure and on sets. They're a little more reserved. So they didn't really understand his whole nature. And so the first day of shooting, it's these porn stars. These are actors. He had an audition for those roles. And if you can imagine, they showed up the first day of shooting, and that's the scene. So half the crew is going to quit, going, "We're not going to be a part of this kind of movie." So they were ready to walk off the set, and they go, no, this is just the movie within the movie. It's going to play while this other scene is playing. This is just, one little scene. And so then they said, "We got to read this one,
So I guess they hadn't seen how much you were naked in the movie at that point.
None of us had. No, it was quite an experience. In fact, to this day, I continue to look for scripts with nudity. No, that's not true. It was, you're reading in the script, David transforms into a wolf, turn the page. You go, I wonder what that means. I had no idea what that process was going to be like. Wakes up in the zoo. You go, okay, wakes up in the zoo, yeah. Naked, steals a coat from a woman. So again, having lived in England for a couple of years, and knowing we were going back and shooting in February and March, I knew this was going to be fun. I mean, and on shoots, like any time, you always go over the limited time that you have on a location. And it certainly was the same in the zoo. We were in the Regent's Park Zoo. It's a real zoo. It's in London. And we're shooting, and I'm looking out, and this is a scene where I streak across, grab the coat, and keep running. And so we're about to, we're set up to shoot this scene. And I look over, I go, why do we have extras over here in the background? And they go, oh, those aren't extras. The zoo's open. You go, wait a minute. What do you mean the zoo's open? Well, we've gone past our allotted time. We were only supposed to be here till 9:30 in the morning, but we're going a little over, so don't pay any attention to them. So there's always stuff like that. They're always making fun of me. The crew is always behind the scenes making very crazy jokes, and you're just. I had to get into that mindset and those scenes came later in the shoot. The very first day for us to shoot was in the truck in the first scene that you see, coming down the road like we're in, out in the moors, and coming down the road with the sheep, and because, keep clear of the moors, boys, stick to the road. And that was our first day of shooting. The nude stuff and, everything else, love scenes, waking up with wolves in the cage. That all came much later in the schedule.
So,
are we going to continue in that line, or are we going to move? Go on.
That's really up to you. This can be your show.
Hey, okay. Anyway, we're going to get to some questions, too. I hope some of you have interesting questions. And then I'll tell you the silliest question I've ever been asked, which I always find very funny. Go ahead.
No, I thought I might know that one already. So, how many takes did you do with the wolves in the cage? Because I've heard it was not many.
No, that was a one-take thing. The wolf cage was a set built, and it was towards the end of the day. We're losing light, which was okay. They could make it, they could make the lighting effect. It helped them to be able to control the lighting by having it get dark. But it was at the end of a day, and they brought in these wolves, which, had these, we were going, well, they're not really trained, right? No, you can't train wolves. I said, oh, is that so? So they go, but they've been fed. You go, okay, well, isn't that exciting to know? And very helpful. So they were saying, no quick movements, no loud noises, you'll be fine. Well, the scene calls for, waking up, seeing them, and getting the hell out of there as quickly as you can. So I was saying, this is a one-off, fellas. Let's make sure you get it, because I didn't want to, you can't read a wolf. The wolf looks at you, and it just, it's not wagging its tail. It doesn't have its ears back or anything like that. It just looks at you in this kind of moon look, and you just don't know what it's going to do. So that was my one take. But John Landis, by the way, is like that. He is so confident in seeing what was going on, from behind the camera, that he would often do one take and say, we got it, let's go. And we'd say, well, wait a second, I feel like, could we do a couple more takes? Well, okay, but I think I got what I need. And that really came into play with Rick Baker and his makeup. Now, Rick, imagine, he's been working on this stuff for months, literally from October, and then they get the stuff over to England, and now we're on a set, and the arm is supposed to stretch, and he's done it in the shop, but we're not really sure what it's going to look like on film, of course, and what it's going to look like on the day on the set. So there'd be different times during the course of that transformation where looks like the snout shoots out. Well, that's a mechanical head, a mechanical device, and on action, boom, the snout shoots forward. And John goes, cut, we got it. And Rick would go, whoa, wait a minute. That took me, 4 months to make. You can't just, we got it. He goes, well, what else does it do? He said, well, that's pretty much what it's designed to do. We got it. I mean, John would just, upset him because he knew he would shoot it from a couple of different angles, 2 or 3 takes, so the wolf's, snout shooting forward, done, move on. And then I'd go back and I'd be in the process of a makeup, the arm stretching, couple takes, got it, let's go. So it was, it wasn't uncommon that we would do very few takes, but with the wolves particularly, one take.
So we obviously know that American Werewolf has endured for 40 years now.
40
right?
glorious years. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's just kind of mind-boggling to think.
And you look exactly the same.
Yeah, sure. It's funny, I get different reactions when people come to my table at shows, at these conventions that I've done over the years. And depending on the age of the person, a lot of kids. And, kids say the darndest things, They look at the photos and then look at me, and look at the photos and look at me and say things like, what have you got to do with this movie? Or, are you in this? Yeah, that's me. That's me a long time ago. And I go, well, have you seen this movie? And many times kids say, yeah, my dad showed me this movie. I go, you know what rated R means? They go, no, what? Well, it means children under 17. And they'd say, well, I said, how old were you when you saw it? 8. I mean, how many here saw the movie when you were 12 or younger? I said, now look around. These are the parents we need to talk to.
Nobody tell them about my daughter.
Yeah, and a lot of times younger kids will say, no, I wasn't scared. I go, well, wait a second. What does that tell you about what are they watching that movie didn't scare them, Anyway, enough of my editorializing. Do you have another question?
I have a couple, yeah.
Okay. I got time.
I was going to ask why you think that the film has endured this long. If it is, obviously we know the effects were amazing. It won the Academy Award. But it is a tight script and everything like that. And I was just curious what your opinion is on why this is something that continues to be shown and why this is something that we do continue to show to our kids. Just not the ones under 17.
I don't know. No, I think, for one thing, horror as a genre has the most loyal fans of any genre in movie. And you can, it's true. Give yourselves a hand. Because for one thing, you're so knowledgeable about horror films. When new ones come out, you see them, you purchase them, you get the DVDs, extremely loyal. In fact, executives are more willing to give the green light to films that are horror-driven than other types of movies when you're trying to get financing. It's just because they know there's an audience out there that will find it, and will be very loyal and would like to buy things and the merchandising with these, particularly. So that's from a business standpoint. From the creative standpoint, yes, Rick Baker made an unbelievable and set the bar very high for practical makeup. That was the thing that was the only thing, it was really the only game in town was practical makeup. And there were other guys doing it as well. Rob Bottin from The Howling and Rick worked together. Rick was working on The Howling before John found out about it, John Landis, and said, you said you'd do my film. And he says, well, I'm just waiting for you to get the money, And Landis says, I've got the money. So that was, these are the guys that were making all these effects that were so new and state-of-the-art. And so that sets the bar very high. And when people think about makeup and then CGI came along, and it was in the hands of people that were still experimenting, I think, with it or something. Because you know as well as I do, a lot of times it just doesn't work, or it's overdone, overused. I know for a fact that directors don't always get, that's all done in post-production. So the movie may be out of their hands by that time and sent overseas to where the artists who are doing the CGI have no real connection with the movie. They just see storyboards of what they're supposed to do, and they create the creature and or the action that is required, and then send it back. And that's what they get. saying, you got to put this in my movie and it costs so much money. So there's that element as well where they don't have the control that certainly John did and that Rick did in practical makeup. So I think that, and then ultimately it's the story. You know, the story is sort of universal in the sense that there's a love story involved. There's a story of it's somewhat tragic in the sense that our heroes are killed. And, or in my case, I looked at the character as someone who was given really bad news. And you can imagine someone, you know, in your life who's been given really bad news and is in total denial about it. You know, I thought of it as a terminal disease, saying you're not going to live through this, and the only way out is to take your own life. That's not something that was really I could think of in terms of a werewolf. No, that was too unreal. But the idea of it being a terminal condition, being completely in denial about it, and then ultimately succumbing to it was something that I could, you know, use from my standpoint as approaching it, you know, as a character. And so all those elements are very, you can relate to, and I think that's part of what it does. And another thing that doesn't hurt is the fact that it's in London, which is really one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's a great city that hasn't changed much in 400 years. You know, I mean, there's tons of building. I was over there in 2019, and there's so much building going on all over the place, and they're going up because there's no place to go. You know, you know, it's just real estate is so expensive. So they're going up, and so things are getting higher, and they're building more and more, you know, tall buildings. But all those historical places are there, all those well-known places, Piccadilly Circus, Trafalgar Square, you know, those are all still there. And so there's a timelessness about it. You know, you can see the movie, the cabs and the buses are still very much like they are today. So you can't necessarily tell me, without looking at the actors now, that movie was made in 1981. You know, I think that has a lot to do with it. You know how you watch TV and you watch some old episodes of, you know, Hawaii Five-0 or, you know, and you look at the cars. I mean, that's usually the giveaway is, you know, look, or, you know, hairstyles and, you know, dress and so forth. But right away, the locale will give away what time period you're in. And this movie doesn't. It sort of keeps it, you know, very much in a time warp, being that it has London as a backdrop. And that's about it, I guess.
So if I'm not incorrect, you were not new to London, though. You studied in London.
No, that's right. After college, I went to Penn, University of Pennsylvania, and then I went to Lambda, which is called the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and it's sort of a misnomer because there wasn't a whole lot of music. But what it was a drama school for up-and-coming young actors who wanted to get some professional training, and particularly in the classics, Shakespeare. And also it gave me an opportunity to be living in London as a student and going to the theater. I mean, we went every night, every other night, cheaply, you know, and we also worked in theaters as ushers. My friends were at the National Theater. I was at a place called the Royal Court Theater. So I got to see people like, you know, Laurence Olivier on stage, and John Gielgud, and Malcolm McDowell, and Alec Guinness, and every big British actor, Alan Bates, Paul Scofield, all these guys who we've all seen in movies, but to see them on stage was just an invaluable experience. And getting to meet some of them, and so that it brought to, for me, going, they're real people. These guys are like, this is what they do. This is their job. They, you know, they humanize the whole idea, which was our dream as actors, acting students, to actually see that you can do it, you know. So that was invaluable to me. And living in London, it was so neat. What was cool about, as an actor, I had this American approach because I'm an American guy. And they would say, that's so American, you know. And I go, well, what does that mean? Well, in England, you can just, if you sound it and look it, you can find the inner workings. You can find that. But we're actors, American actors, want to feel it and know about the character before they, you know, this is a very loose difference. But I was completely taken by that and pointed out to me all the time what was so American about me and my approach. One of my approaches was I took nothing seriously. So my teachers were a little concerned that I was sort of a goof off. But I was just I so enjoyed the process of being a full-time student that when I finished, after 2 years, it was a 3-year program, but I'd already been in college. And I went and looked to see where do you start your career as an actor. And the only choice for me was New York. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut. I'd been to New York so many times with my parents and family. I go, I guess I got to go to the Big Apple and see what that's like. I don't know if you have been to New York to work or to live, or I mean, it's pretty intimidating. And particularly as an actor, where do you start? And that's a whole nother story. But that's where I started. And in fact, my first job was at the New York Shakespeare Festival downtown. They do all kinds of different, original plays, many of which moved to Broadway and beyond. So this was a production of Hamlet with Sam Waterston as Hamlet. And this cast was going to be done at Lincoln Center, this production with a cast of 40. And we did an uncut version, 4-hour play, 4 hours. You know what I learned from that play? I learned how to play poker. Because in the green room, while you're waiting forever to, when's the feel you're going to die, while you're waiting, all of us would be around and learning how to play 7-card stud and so forth. And I remember one of these so I had that was my first time I got to join Actors Equity. I'm in the cast. I'm changing costumes. I'm in every army. I'm playing in the players scene. I'm, doing all these other roles. So I'm in the biggest hand of my life, about to win a pot. And the green room door flies open and this guy yells, "Naughton!" And you see now in these green rooms, they have a box so you can hear the play that's on stage. So you don't have to be in the wings to hear your cue if you're coming out for whatever. And as I said, I was always running on as a member of an army or something. Well, this particular scene was Ophelia's procession. She's being with these 4 guys in cloaks, black cloaks, pallbearers, carrying her while Hamlet is starting a speech about here she comes. Well, while he's saying that, no one's coming because I'm playing poker in the green room. Well, that didn't sit too well. Now, the stage manager is in the back of the house for this particular production. So he's not in the wings going, what the heck's going on? Where the other? And so he can't tell until after the show whatever happened. But it was pretty obvious who was at fault because when we came out with our black cloaks, I was the only one that forgot his black cloak. So there were 3 people in black cloaks and hoods and 1 guy in a white T-shirt, trying not to be there and looking. And so that was the kind of stuff that happens in live theater. Things happen, and I don't even know how we got on that. But to this day, I'm still embarrassed by it.
Okay, so if we're embarrassing you, if that's the track we've gone down.
That's right. Oh, really?
So I'm going to open it up to questions, obviously.
Yeah, that sounds good.
No, you're stuck with me for a minute.
Oh, you have another question?
I have one more.
Okay.
So not everybody knows, but before American Werewolf in London, if I remember correctly, you did have a song that broke the top 40.
What, I did?
Last time I checked.
How does it go?
I don't know. How does it go? Do we have it? Because I thought we did.
Doesn't that sound like a cue? Who's heard this song before? Come on, I bet nobody?
You're going to have to age yourself now.
Come on.
Raise your hand.
I'm making it. Okay, this was 79, 80. Thank you for turning that off.
I had to.
Yeah, you did. I wasn't sure where you were going with that. But yeah, I had a chance to do a series, a half-hour sitcom on ABC that was based on Saturday Night Fever, and also got a chance to record the title song. Now, the show didn't. It was called Making It. The show didn't. But it was funny, too, because our premiere night, we were behind Mork and Mindy, which was like, the top 2 or 3 show on television, and we premiered right after it, going, "We're hits. We're going to be a hit." So about 4 shows in, they changed us to Friday night opposite Different Strokes and the Hulk. That was the end of making it. But the song continued on the top 40, went to number 5. I had this gold record, which I have at home, and this record, so I was going on American Bandstand, Rockin' New Year's Eve, which is being sponsored by Dr. Pepper, which is a whole nother story. And it was pretty neat to have this song. On RSO label, Robert Stigwood, who had this group some of you have probably heard of called the Bee Gees. Yeah, making it for 2 weeks was higher than any of their songs. I went, don't tell them that. So yeah, so I had this song that, as I said, went higher than anybody expected. Then Paramount had the rights to it because the series was at Paramount, so they put it into Meatballs, Bill Murray's movie. So a lot of people think that song is from the movie Meatballs, but you and I know it's from the Didn't Make It series, Making It.
So I had to.
Thank
So
you, you had to. Now we're out of time.
No, we've got plenty of time.
No,
for
but
you
we do
guys to
certainly
ask
have time for any questions you folks might have. I have to tell you the dumbest question I've ever, did I say dumbest? So you can't out-dumb this question. If any of you think you have a dumb question, you can't. This guy gets up and comes down to the mic and says, were you the actor or the werewolf? I am not lying. And I looked at him and said, sit down. No, I go, yeah, I'm the werewolf. And they brought me all the way. This was in Australia. So yeah, they flew me down from LA because I was in the wolf suit. Sit down. So if anybody has any questions, feel free. If you don't have to get up to a mic, I'm certain I could hear you. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming to Erie, PA. I saw this 40 years ago on the big screen in San Diego with some friends from high school, and but anyway, I have a little more of a curiosity on the stop motion. You know, the how the transformation occurred. I mean, was there like a series of different prosthetics, and they were?
Yes, these prosthetics were made by Rick Baker, right. And the cameras were basically, with the exception of the hair that grows on the back. Now that was a reverse film where they pull it through, and then reverse the film, and now it grows through the skin and becomes really. With that's really the only film technique used, other than just rolling and watching the makeup do what it was designed to do. Rick's genius really was not just in sculpting and painting blood and so on. These were mechanical devices that actually worked. The hand stretching didn't deform. It was literally a hand where the fingers stretched. It looked exactly like my hand, but at the end of the elbow and this fake hand arm were lots of tubes, and with air made the hand actually stretch. With the head itself, the snout was a mechanical device which was spring-loaded and on a specific cue would shoot forward and not distort. That's the thing. It just didn't get all weird. It looked exactly like they did it. And then they'd slow down the film so that it wouldn't be just shoot out. But otherwise, there were no film tricks where people talk, about smoke and mirrors or stop motion. No, it was all pretty much techniques built that were filmed, and they performed on cue. So it was
like an audio animatronic without the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not now at the end with Griffin's makeup, and Griffin particularly wasn't that excited about. Because this is one of the biggest roles of my life, and every time you see me, I'm more decayed. He's like, sorry, Griffin. And Rick was not too. I'll tell you a quick story about that too. Is Rick was trying to say, read the script. That's your character, So in fact, the first night, but I was going to say the point I was going to make was that at the end, when we're in the movie theater talking, that's basically a puppet that Rick built with a moving, because he wanted to see the decay to the point where you could see through. There was no more cheek, no more flesh, and now it was just jawbone. So how do you do that on on a person? He built a puppet the same size, and then Griffin voiced that character that I was working with. And so pretty amazing stuff. And somebody has that. I forget who got the puppet, it wasn't. But a lot of that stuff doesn't stick around because it's latex, foam, and it just disintegrates. But just going back to, Rick tells this story, which, I was there that night, but I didn't realize what had happened. When Griffin gets attacked, he's told by Rick, look, I only have this head, made, and I've only got like 4 teeth, extras. So go easy when we attack you. Just go easy on the head because this took, months to make, and, I don't know what you're going to do. He's going, yeah, okay. Well, come action, Griffin just goes berserk in that amazing reaction and practically rips the head off of Rick's arm, which pissed off Rick. So on take 2, Rick says, okay, you want to play tough with my creature? Take 2, Rick just beat the hell out of him. And that's the one you see in the movie. So it's like, he's just getting beaten by these teeth. And so he was, Rick played pretty hard.
And you said that the hair growth, that was a reverse action photography?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there for that, and I hate to be, an authority on Rick's effects. I know what happened to me, but that one I was always told was it? Yeah, it was pretty clever. You have it already there, and then you pull it through, and then reverse the film, and it grows. Pretty interesting effect, and very effective.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. Oh, that's a photographer. Yes, ma'am. My love interest? Don't let my wife hear you say that. Jeez. Well, Jenny doesn't know this. No, I'm kidding. No, she's in England, married to a banker. I mean, this guy had no clue who we were, what we were. We were all a bunch of guys, trying to impress Jenny on that show, But she was clearly probably the most experienced, having been a child actress, and was a real good sport being on the show with John Landis, and who all he could yell was, more blood! And a bunch of guys, turning into a werewolf and, being on location in London. So, no, she wasn't. I have to tell you, my first time that I had one of those aha moments, as a student, we used to go to the National Theater and see all their plays. Well, there was a production of one particular play called Equus, which has since been, are you familiar with that play? Now, that's a very serious play about blinding horses, and there's a scene in the stable where the boy meets the girl, and they get it on, and they get it on stage. And I've come to find out, it was Jenny. Because we as students would go to see it. One of my buddies was working at the National Theater, and we go, when's Equus on? Well, it's on Tuesday and Saturday. We'd sneak in to see the Tuesday performance and the Saturday performance of Equus, particularly because of this amazing scene with Jenny on stage, naked. And then when I found out that it was in the course of the film that I realized, wait a minute, you were in Equus? We all had a big crush on you. Yeah, with goofy stuff, But no, we haven't. We went back in, I think, I don't know what it was, 2000 something, to promote a DVD release. And that was the last time I saw Jenny. She was there, Griffin and I and John, and we were all, hanging out, which had some fun, and got a chance to be on radio, BBC Radio, for an hour with John Landis and the cast of American Werewolf in London. Do you know that none of us got to talk except for John? I said, that's the last time I do a show with John Landis. I'll tell you.
Hi. Just a couple points here. An observation. Do you know, the running joke of "See you next Wednesday" in the Landis movies? Do you know, the origins of it, or?
I'm not really, an authority on this, but I believe it was just, he has it and it repeats.
Right.
And he's a big fan of Alfred Hitchcock and some of the stuff that Hitchcock would do in terms of themes. Landis appears in this movie. I don't know if you saw, when we're in when the cars are all crashing and they're hitting people and they're falling out of cars. There's one guy that crashes through a big plate glass window. That's John Landis. He had to do a stunt. He hails himself, I was a stunt man before I was a director. Oh, really, John? And and he's probably done some stuff on other friends' movies too. But I think he wrote a screenplay, which was never made, and it was called See You Next Wednesday. And so as a sort of a tribute to that, the movie that was never made, he has it in all his movies.
And I venture a guess that you're probably the only person on the planet that when Michael Jackson's Thriller came out, been there, done that.
Yeah, well, I used to make the joke, which is not even that funny, but I go, I do Dr. Pepper for 4 years. This guy comes out with Pepsi. I got to do American Werewolf. Sure enough, this Michael Jackson guy has got to do Thriller. I go, Michael.
And you're like, I know how they did that.
Come on, Michael, leave me alone. But,
riding your coattails, right?
Yeah, it was, and I just regret not being in it. I could have been a zombie. I could have been a zombie.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Oh, it's getting quiet. Any more questions? Any answers? Yes, in the back? Yes, I saw you.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering about your relationship with Griffin Dunn for the film, and I like watching the commentaries. So I was watching the Full Moon Edition commentaries with you and him, and just was there some kind of was there a natural relationship between you two that came across on the screen, or was that all acting, I guess?
Well, it's never just all acting. It's just you luck out if you happen to get along with somebody. Nice. We had similar upbringing. I mean, he had spent some time in Connecticut and New York, certainly, and I grew up in Connecticut. So there was that sort of easy familiarity. There's also what helps is also being in England, and you're the only Americans. Gotcha. So you have a bond there that's already built in. But I have to tell you, you're not playing buddies if you don't have that chemistry, and that's real. That's the real part of it, and you're only lucky to do that. There are times when you don't love the people you're working with, and you have to be professional about it. But and you hear those stories all the time, or there'll be some sort of article about, the celebrities that hated their spouses or whatever. It's because it's not common to just immediately get along with somebody. Now, in a TV series, it's a little different because those series go on for years, if you're lucky enough. And that there are those relationships where people have worked together. I think about the Hill Street Blues things and those sorts of long, these other shows, any of the hospital shows, where, these casts have been around. Grey's Anatomy, for how long, And people on soaps, 10, 15 years? So it is family at that point, but you've had a long period of time to build relationships with those other actors. Films aren't that way. You show up, and, day one, the clock's running, or the meter's running, certainly, and you don't get a chance to rehearse nearly like you do in theater, where you actually read a script. Every movie that I've since done, or if I can get to the director and ask, the actors would volunteer, because they think they have to pay you if they call you. So they would just love to get together and read this. So you can hear it, the director can hear it, and the actors can hear the other parts. All you really focus on is your own part generally when you're preparing, or when you find out who the other actors are, if you know them or not. But Griffin and I had no previous experience with each other. We just sort of hit it off. We had no clue about John Landis. We were both rookies as far as how do you deal with this guy? How do you believe this guy? Because the way John talks to you, you think you're in the middle of being put on the whole time. So he can play to your insecurities as an actor, which everybody has, but you kind of go, did you understand? So I just would take him at whatever he said was what he meant. Nice. If it's a joke, we're going to find out. But, rather than try to figure out John Landis, and as I said, Griffin was open to the same sort of way that Jenny was a little different, but she can be because she was playing. It works in the role, to be
yeah.
difficult.
I think
And-
it came across really well that you got the whole
yeah,
cast
it's like
does a really good job.
it's strange to start with, and that happens in every film. If you look at the relationships. Now I hear of stories, and I'm not that kind of method actor, where if the bad guy shows up on set and is going to be a badass the whole shoot and not talk to anybody, and I mean, that's not where I come from, but I don't play that many killers either. So everybody has their own process. You just hope that you like the people that you're working with. And you can say in your own jobs, you have to work with some people you like, and sometimes you have to work with people you don't like, or worse. And sometimes, the days go by better when you're working with somebody you like. And we had a lot of laughs on this show, some at our own expense, of course, because John was pulling the strings. And anytime I was naked, I was always being made fun of, if you can imagine. There's things, we're going to start a scene. We're going to run like a deer. I was given that direction, Run like a deer. I go, okay, hang on, I got a question. It's 40 degrees. I'm barefoot. And I got to walk through this muddy, or jog through or run like I said, even in a warm climate, I don't run like a deer, or a gazelle. So, there was always chatter and chats and talks. I said, John, show me what you want. I used to love to do that one. Show me how you want to do that little gazelle hop through the woods.
Nice.
Got him on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dun-dun-dun-dun. Oh, yes. Or, no, everything has its own challenge, The thing about theater is you can't stay away from it too long or you'll never get back on stage. I know that. I always was taught that. And I was trying to think, in fact, tonight, talking to some people about the last time I was on stage. Theater's really cool because it's live and anything can happen on stage. You better be in the moment or it can go by you. The moment comes by, your cue goes by you. I've had those things happen to me on stage. So I don't really have a preference. Film is generally, as they say, the director's medium. So you're there as just a piece of his vision. So you don't get to, at least I don't get to when I'm working, to make all the decisions and calls and know when it's a good take. And, I'm not directing the film I'm in. So it's really a director's medium. Theater, when that curtain goes up, you're in charge. It's your show. And that's really, I think, what feeds actors' souls and egos and what have you. But it's a huge challenge. But as many actors have said, as they get older, or in any time, if you've been away from it, it's too terrifying to get back on stage. It just is. I always wanted to do stand-up as just a what's the most fearful thing you could try? You've done musical theater, I've done commercial stuff, I've done, how about stand-up, open mic night? Not yet. Has anybody done that? Do we have any actors in the house? Are there people here who are performers? I forget I'm in Erie. You don't have a lot of actors here, huh? I'd be living all by myself in Erie if I lived. No, it's true. I know you're in other things, but I see this Warner Theater. I hope you support that. That looks fantastic. Yeah, that looks fantastic. Wouldn't that be cool to do a production here in Erie, original production, and have it premiere at the Warner Theater? That'd make the front page, of some big movies, big publications. But it's hard to do, hard to raise money, keep it small, and do it. Did you have a question?
Well, I wanted to tell you, it's the first time I've seen this movie, but it won't be the last, and it was great. And I loved you in Midnight Madness, but how was it, you got to work with Michael J. Fox in his first movie, Midnight Madness, and you got to work with Pam Dauber and My Sister Sam, and rest in peace, Rebecca Schaefer. The cool people, who was the coolest person you ever got to act with?
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one. Nobody comes to mind.
Okay.
I'll never forget being totally upstaged by Christopher Plummer, who was, this man comes on set with a reputation of being Christopher Plummer. And I also worked with Kevin Bacon on stage in a play, and an unknown at the time, Bronson Pinchot, whom I'm sure you remember Bronson Pinchot. And they were unknown. This was like in 1983-4 in New York, an off-Broadway show, going, this guy Bacon's he's got some chops. And particularly with Michael J. Fox, he's going, my agent wants me to do TV. We're going, well, give it a shot, Michael. Little do we know, you've seen the sort of stuff he's done. And but I was going to say about Christopher Plummer, he did this thing that I thought was so interesting. He knew how to get the camera to stay on him or the editor not to cut. So he would stop, he'd do a long pause before he'd say my name, because you need to know the character's name. And I think my name was, my name was like Bill, in the shows. So he'd say, well, tell me, Bill. And I watched him and I went, wait a second. How to steal a scene. Just do these long pauses, and anything that's really important, just take that pause. And they'll never cut away from you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Yeah, I often don't answer the questions that's asked, but please forgive me. Well, I will say John had that, ultimate say as the executive producer, writer, director, and that's really fun and something that I've always really admired, because I've worked with so many others who don't. Directors nowadays are hired guns just like actors are hired for the job. They don't have that ultimate authority, so that anytime anything happens, they always have to check with somebody else to see if it's okay. John Landis was not that way. He comes from that school of those directors coming up in the 80s like Steven Spielberg and John, who are ultimate, they're filmmakers. They have the decisions to make. And he was very, he knew, he had all his buddies. I mean, all the guys from Animal House called him up and said, I want to be in that movie, and he was pretty confident in what he was looking for. And we were just lucky. I always felt really lucky by his just ultimate authority, as was Griffin, I think, too. And then afterwards, we talked about, well, what happens? What about more movies? And we were all, I think our contracts all had multiple films in them, just in the off chance that he wanted to do sequels. And we were going, both Griffin and I went, okay, look, if we get to do this again, we got to talk beforehand. Because the thought was, we need to renegotiate. Because the makeup was so brutal. It was, unlike anything anybody had talked. You couldn't talk to any other actor who had worked with Rick Baker. Now you can. Eddie Murphy was like, you've seen any of Eddie Murphy's movies where he's in all these different makeups, playing all these different roles. That's all Rick Baker makeup. And of all the actors at the time, Rick would say that he'd worked with, who'd been in makeup, Eddie Murphy couldn't get enough of it. Whereas many actors, Tommy Lee Jones, when he's playing in the, he's the Joker, I believe, or what was his character? Two-Face. Right, Two-Face. Another Rick Baker makeup. He said he couldn't get Tommy Lee to wear the contact lens. That's a big deal. Rick's a perfectionist, and he put me in these contact lenses. In that scene in the, where I wake up, when you're scared by that, that's kind of a big scare. But those are glass lenses, and they hurt. They're glass and they're painted yellow, wolf yellow, and you can't see out of them, and they're glass. And you kind of go, can we get these out now? A few more minutes, just a few more minutes. So anyway.
I think can we do one more? Yeah, we got time for one more.
Yes, sir, you're there at the mic.
Well, you mentioned John Landis, kind of playing his card as a former stuntman. Did it ever come up, his experience running around in his own gorilla suit in his first movie, Schlock?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have seen Schlock. He talks about it, and in a very funny way. But that's how he met Rick. He and Rick Baker go back to their, Super 8 days. And Rick Baker was making, and Rick did the suit, the monkey suit. In fact, Rick Baker has done so many apes suits. Planet of the Apes, certainly, and a number of other big movies where there's an ape, because that was his pet project. He loved doing ape suits and makeup and being in the suit. And John, too, was, he had to start somewhere, similar to Spielberg, in that they make these little almost home movies. And Schlock was a little, their first endeavor. And Rick talks about, the makeup. He was using his mother's oven to bake the different prosthetic things that he needed out of his mother's oven. He went on, as I said, to win 7 Academy Awards, and he just retired recently in the last couple of years, and is just happy as a clam being an artist, sculpting, painting. He's put, they both, Rick and John, have books of their own about the making of different movies that they've been in, and they've sold their books around them. They're huge volumes. It's nothing you can just carry around. But so that's where they met, and they continue to work together, and and it's so funny because John still pokes fun at Rick. Rick's a quiet, introverted guy. Landis is the opposite. And when they come and talk about their work, John talks about it, and Rick just lets his work do the talking, So when we would do, as I said on the set, anytime there was extra takes, John would always win because he's the director, and Rick was going, couldn't we do one more take? Couldn't we just do one more take of the hand moving?
I think that ends our Q&A.
Thanks for coming tonight, folks. Really makes me feel great. Thank you.
It was great to finally come and meet David Naughton from one of my favorite movies, not just horror movie, but movie of all time, is American Werewolf in London.
I've been a fan since I was 8 years old. I was just telling him, I watched this so many times I destroyed the VHS tape.
This is one of my favorite movies, American Werewolf in London. I'm so excited to see it on a big screen because I've never seen it on a big screen.
I've been a fan of him since 89, 87, whatever this came out.